Here's the truth. Even grown women struggle to navigate the trickiness of friendships, and that's with years of experience. So it's expected, right, that your kids will need guidance, but that's a tricky balance too, especially when you're watching them navigate hard or hurtful relationships. It's a topic that calls for a solid mom chat. Motivational speakers and hosts of the online community Let's Talk Sis, Alexis and Chanté, are gonna help us talk to our kids about hurtful friendships. And it's interesting, this topic comes up, great to have you guys always. This topic comes up and I think we all have a reaction to it based on either our own experience as children, or even the mom lens can be hard to navigate as you look in on what's happening. You're like, that's my kid, I love them, I wanna go mama bear and protect.
It is so hard to navigate, and I feel like it's important that we talk about it because we have these very human responses where we are feeling so deeply for our kids.
Yes.
But this is also such a great practice opportunity to help them identify their feelings, their emotions, find words to express themselves, create healthy boundaries. So it's such an important learning experience. We don't want to skip over it.
Yeah.
But as moms, we have to manage our own emotions in it also.
Well, I really respect and I'm excited to hear your insight. You both have, you're lighthearted enough to take it on from the appropriate level, but also I know you appreciate the value of friendships, and we do want to model, as you said, what's appropriate. Have you encountered this with your kids yet, where they've come to you and had kind of the disruption?
Yes, I think we both have.
Yeah.
And Alexis has teenagers, so I'm still in like the kindergarten phase of it, and it's different.
Where it's like they stole my crayons.
Exactly, exactly. But there's emotion no matter what, and I think they're watching us. Our kids are watching us all the time, how we're navigating our relationships, how we're setting boundaries. So to have these conversations on an age-appropriate level when they're struggling, it's vitally important for them.
And then you jump to teenage years, and I imagine that's where you really have to watch your own words. Like as you talk about your own friend or neighbor, they're listening.
They are absolutely listening. And how we navigate conflict in our marriage, in our family relationships, our adult friendships, they're absolutely watching us.
You asked your Instagram community, and this is one of the beautiful points of the community that you've built, is they're willing to share and to teach one another. What did they say about navigating? Any good standouts that came out of that?
I think one of the big things is not rescuing our kids, not jumping in, which is, it's a mom instinct.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll talk to the teacher. I'll make sure that child, but stepping back, having these conversations with them, asking them questions like, well, how do you think the other person was feeling? What do you think they were seeing in this situation? And then giving them the skills, role playing with them on how to have that conversation on their own.
My mom was huge on the role play, and I look back and I really appreciate that. Like, what are you going to say if, or how are you going to react when? Because when the emotions flare up, whatever age you are, it's hard to sometimes keep control of those reactions. So I think that's really wise.
Yeah.
Any other tips or advice that bubbled up from your community?
So I think it's just, first of all, this is something that we want to talk about because everyone has experience with it. And I loved what Chanté was saying, but also like validating the emotion.
Yeah.
You don't have to validate or support maybe the behavior, but you can say like, oh, how did that make you feel? And then even sometimes you might need a course correct with your own child. There's times with my kids that I'm like, you did what? You said that?
Isn't that the worst?
Yes.
You're like,
horrified.
And then you're like, I had a moment, I won't say which kid, I will protect the source, but I remember thinking, you're the problem. Like, I see it, like you're the kid, you know, and that's hard to swallow too.
It is, but it's such a good learning opportunity and to be able to be involved and have these conversations. And one thing that we teach when we go into like companies and organizations is perspective taking and perspective giving. So being able to share your perspective with someone else and receive someone else's perspective. And with kids, that's important too. We can say, hey, how do you think so-and-so felt? Maybe she was feeling kind of backed in a corner and she didn't know what to say. And how did you feel? Can you express how that made you feel? So it's just such an important skill set to share that, validate the emotion, and then just role play and make it a normal part of conversation.
I say, if anything else, base level success is that you are talking about it, right? That you do have that open line of communication. With the more hurtful friendships, you say we can help them identify red flags. What sort of red flags would you call out?
Oh, there's one. You can go ahead. I'm like, there's so many
both took
little
a
things.
breath at the same time.
Well, first of all, we have to understand too, like child development, and maybe something that would be a major red flag in an adult. With a child, it's like this is a learning opportunity. And I feel like I have to help my kids recognize how they feel in certain groups, and I don't want to go in and say, I don't want you hanging out with so and so, but instead of just saying like, how do you feel? Do you feel like you can be your best self? Do you feel like they listen to you when you express yourself? And just helping them see the things that are important to them, like what they want as a friend and what they can be as a friend, and just being really aware of how you feel when you're with different groups of people.
I love that. Any other thoughts on that?
I was just going to say, they're going to be so influenced by their friendships. So it's important that we teach them how they feel, that they can follow that intuition and they can trust themselves. And then teaching them how to communicate boundaries. Boundaries with children can look rude. If they don't say anything and they just set a boundary, it's like, oh. So helping them find the words and the language, that's not something that comes naturally. It's a conversation.
That's a super good point, that boundaries at a certain age it does feel rude. And it almost goes against the behavior we're trying to coach up in other, you know, the thank yous and the pleases and the kindness and the all of that. And so boundaries can be tricky. Is there any specific boundary that comes to mind that as you've navigated with your own kids, or that maybe your community put forward, that this boundary was worth teaching because it set the foundation for good relationships going forward?
So one that comes up a lot is like force or manipulation. So if it's like, they never let me choose, or they always boss me around, or they're so mean and they tell me I have to do this and that, that is such a good one that I think is very normal in friend groups. But to be able to say, hey, sometimes I want to make choices too. Or what if we all take turns, and give them the language. And then if that doesn't work, then maybe you support and encourage other friendships. And we both talk about this all the time. It's so important to diversify your friendship circles. And sometimes problems arise when you're with the same group all the time. And so to mix it up is really helpful for kids.
I've tried to steer my kids away from even the title of best friend, just because I'm like, you can have 20 best friends. And that does open you up for more, I think, opportunities and avenues going forward. When the one connection isn't striking on a Monday, you have another friend to visit during recess on a Tuesday, sort of a thing.
And that you can bring more people into your group too.
Always. I love this idea of focusing on quality over quantity. It's not a number game.
It's not. And I think sometimes with kids, it's like, how much time do I spend with them determines how close of friends we are. And you're right, this best friend thing is a really big thing, especially in that elementary school age, but really focusing on, what does that quality friendship feel like? I think they have to identify that, and identify that they feel good with this person, and that they can be themselves. And maybe they're not with them every second of every day, but when they are together, it is a good experience.
I love that. I noticed the word or the phrase self-care bubbled up in this conversation. What's the correlation there?
I think that friendships and human connection are so important to our mental health, our overall health. And when we are investing in good, healthy friendships, and we're also working on ourselves, and we're helping our kids do that, it is a form of self-care. And the benefits and the research, the more human connection, the more eye contact, face-to-face time together, it really does help us individually, our communities, and it's just so beneficial.
So many golden points you've highlighted, and golden questions we can ask our kids to not like say, well, isn't it tempting to sometimes be like, don't play with them. Play with them.
It is tempting.
I know. Just leave them in the dust and go with friend B. No, but I think these guiding questions will hopefully, how do they make you feel, or how do you feel when you're around them, will help them make that smart decision and hopefully choose these healthy relationships for themselves. Ladies, thank you so much. Where can we get more good gab from you?
Well, we're on Instagram, Let's Talk _Sis.
And we are getting ready to release our first season of a podcast in the next 2 weeks. So we'll be having lots more of this conversation.
The podcast is called
Let's Talk Sis.
Of course it is. So 2 weeks it drops?
Yes.
All right, we'll keep our eyes out, and we'll be sure to share it forward when it does go live. Thank you both.
Thank you.
For your insight and your energy.